This is The Day After, Book 2 in the A Day in the Life series, written and narrated by Andrew Masseurs. Prologue. Shelby. Me, Hui, Muhammad Ali. Shelby lay under her covers. It was her favourite duvet cover. On the front of it was a large picture of Jack Skellington from the Nightmare Before Christmas movie. There was something about the duvet cover that made her feel at home. It was a memory from a distant past, when she and her mother spent cherished time together. She could smell the evening. Popcorn freshly popped. Her favourite treats were separated into a large bowl. Her mum smiling next to her, their legs settled snugly under a large warm blanket. The lights would be dimmed and jokes would be littered throughout the conversation. Back then, her mum was the perfect example of how to bring up a happy daughter. And she was happy. Even if it was dark and cold outside. Even if it was just the two of them in Newtown, in Wellington, in New Zealand, in the world, in the universe. They were spending valuable time together, and how Shelby appreciated it. The duvet cover was brought by her mum many years ago, and Shelby wrapped it up over her face, her hands scrunching up the cover to her smiling cheeks. She tried to smell the evening, remembering how happy they were. She looked out the window. It was raining outside. The drips from the rain were slipping down the glass, mixing with the lights from the street outside, causing a kaleidoscope of rainbows. It was late in the evening, around 9 o'clock. Shelby wore her large, pale green headphones over her ears. The curled wire snaked from the headphones, winding their way to the old analogue system her mum had given her years ago. Mum probably got it from her mum, it was so ancient. She loved how the headphones encompassed her ears, drowning out the world and all its problems. Her small earbuds were charging to the side, while she sat in this old stereo world. She hardly acknowledged her phone or any modern technology, not while she listened to the old stereo with its old tubes and lights working to create a sound that came from a needle and vinyl. Her shoulders started to sway as her eyes closed. She did not know it, but she was the mirror of her mother. Her mum did the same when she had a rare day off. The room was dark apart from her mum's lava lamp, which she had stolen and had sat beside her bed, its bubbles coagulating slowly up and down. She loved to have it working while she sat doing homework or listening to music. Her eyes were closed and enjoying the smooth tones of Bik Runga singing the track Drive. The ambience of the soft rain hitting the third-story window mixed with the pop tune, making her feel warm and happy. She started to feel sleepy. It had been a long day for a 12-year-old. She was not like any 12-year-old, not any we know. Each day was comprehensively filled to capacity. Shelby's mum worked 2 jobs. The morning shift started at 6. Her mum would wake at 5. If she slept through the alarm, Shelby would wake her up. It happened often as her mum's second shift finished at 1 a.m. She barely had time to sleep. Shelby had grown up quickly, feeling more like a 21-year-old with responsibilities far beyond her age. She cooked her and her mum breakfast. Most days it was the same. Boiled eggs with a slice of toast and strong coffee. Some days when the fridge was out of eggs, which was becoming more and more frequent. She would make her mum a breakfast of whatever cereal was in the pantry. This morning her mum was spoiled and she got a boiled egg. She remembered they had argued. Money was becoming tight, and it had gotten to the stage that if Shelby asked for anything, she would be thrown guilt trips on how her mum was working 2 jobs, how she could barely afford the roof over their heads, how she was doing it for Shelby, working her life away for her. Shelby no longer asked for anything these days. She just did her best to make her mum's day a little better, a little brighter. But they had argued. Mum's choice of boyfriends had steadily been getting worse. Shelby knew her mum was lonely. She also knew her choices were not only looking for love, but were also hoping for a fast ticket out of this hellhole, for her and especially Shelby. Shelby felt her mum's choices now were causing them harm. Shelby was not silly. Far from it. Shelby could pick out a lie, dissect it and throw it back at you, wrapped in a big bow of honesty. She was way too smart for falseness, and her mum knew it. Her latest pick was the worst in a long line of bad choices. Yes, he had money. Yes, he was handsome. In a rugged, blue-eyed, blonde with tattoos sort of way. But he also had an attitude. Way too much attitude for Shelby's liking. He ordered her mum around, and Shelby didn't like it. He treated the house like it was his. He expected to be served, but he did nothing in return. He was also staying over more, which Shelby did not appreciate. Plus, he treated Shelby like she didn't exist. She could tell he was just using her mum. He also drank too much. He was taking her mum down a horrible dark hole, one filled with alcohol and drugs. Something she had only seen her mum do on occasion, but now she was becoming an authoritative expert on the matter. Her mum was so desperate she would do anything to keep their heads above water. Maybe it was the cost of living. Maybe it was a realization that she couldn't afford anything anymore. The worst choice was better than not being able to survive or being left out on the street. Shelby told her this, that her choice was wrong, that she didn't like him, that he was wrong for her. Shelby's mum didn't like this. She did not appreciate the reality that her child was offering her. "I'm doing this for you," her mum said. "Can't you see that?" Shelby's mum was overtired, was overworked and had 2 weeks unpaid rent and an empty fridge. "You don't know what you're talking about," was a favourite phrase, and everything is going to be fine. But it wasn't. And Shelby knew better than to push it. She knew when her mum was on the edge. Better to agree than to drive her into another scathing rant, especially when her mum was already under so much pressure. Shelby was trying to lighten the load, not increase it. Instead, Shelby dropped the conversation and did the dishes. Her mum left without saying goodbye or saying thank you. It was not unusual. Shelby then made her lunch, picked up her mum's clothes, put the washing on, and made her and her mum's bed all before 6:30 a.m. Lastly, she did some reading before leaving for school just before 7:30. Shelby was pretty much a loner at school. She didn't talk much and generally wouldn't suffer fools. She was not your typical 12-year-old. She felt that if you couldn't keep up with the conversation, then it wasn't worth making the effort. Most of the kids were wrapped up in their own insecurities. She could read them a mile away. She was a loner not by force, but by choice. Her days were spent listening to music and reading in the library. If the sun was shining, she would be forced to go outside. Annoyed, she would do as she was told, usually with a swear word or two in muffled protest. She still hadn't found her full confidence yet. That would come. She would sit out in the sun and read. It was her escape from the problems of home, her escape from the pressures of not wanting to fit in, of not caring. She knew she was too mature for her age group and hated wasting her time. She would leave at the end of the school day with all her work done and up to date. It would be better than anyone else's. She would catch the bus and have some idiot kid make fun of her. She would give them the finger and tell them to fuck off. Sometimes it would result in a fight. Mostly not. Other kids couldn't comprehend her or her confidence. Shelby would get home, normally at 4 p.m. She would cook dinner with whatever was left in the fridge and freezer. She was used to being creative with minimal ingredients. She hardly ever saw her mum during the day. Shelby's mum would be moving between 2 shifts and wouldn't have the time to come home. It was just in the evenings that she would arrive for dinner before taking off for her late night shift. Shelby finished cooking their dinner, laid the table and sat in her favourite spot, the soft corner part of the 3-seater couch. She didn't watch much TV. Instead, she preferred to carry on the latest novel and drift into that far-off world, where she could escape and pretend to be someone else for an hour or so. Tonight, Mum was late getting home. It was after 9. Shelby had left her dinner consisting of canned tuna on rice, covered on the bench. Finishing the Book Runga album, she wondered if she should read some more. Just try a different album, or maybe even write. She opened her drawer to the right and pulled out her little book of notes. In it were the musings of a 12-year-old. Her class teacher, Ms. Reed, inspired her to try poetry. Something she found she had a knack for. Something that helped her escape. It also helped her to cope with her inner thoughts. Mother's Ghost. To say that a girl who's young and lost must lose herself in writing posts, to wish and hope that things may change, enter sweet courage, enter brutal rage. I'm more a tree than a withered seed that swings and sways when she needs me most. I'll make her solid. I'll heal her pain. This girl's true sorrow. Her mother's ghost. Another poem to add to the heartache of my life, thought Shelby. Outside, the rain was getting stronger. The front door opened with a bang. It startled Shelby. She sat upright, looking at her closed bedroom door. The light was still off. The lava lamp drifts shapes onto the ceiling. Behind the closed bedroom door, she could hear voices. Her mum was laughing loudly, followed by her mum's boyfriend and friends. It was going to be one of those nights. Mum obviously had the night off. She would spend it partying. Shelby felt annoyed. They hadn't spent a night together in what felt like months. The boyfriend seemed to get all her time. She felt like storming out into the kitchen and telling Mum Her dinner was made for her out of pretty much nothing. Oh, and also she had done the washing, folded it, put everything away, and emptied the dishwasher. She stood as the Jack Skellington duvet she loved so much tore on the side bed banister. Fuck! She swore to herself quietly. She heard the voices rising in cadence from behind the door. Her mum could be heard saying, "Shh, Shelby's asleep," when the boyfriend answered, "Oh, come on. It's Friday night. Time to party." She heard laughter and the clinking of bottles. Frustrated, Shelby walked over to her door and listened. She hated the fact her doorway was one stop before the bathroom. It was not unusual for a new boyfriend or party invite to storm into Shelby's room, thinking it was the bathroom. She had no way of locking it. Shelby knew it would happen again tonight, so she pulled her bookshelf across the pathway of the door. It took quite a bit of her might. The carpet was thick and heavy. The bookshelf was full of Shelby's favourite hardcover, second-hand novels. It would not stop the door from being pushed, fully open if someone was strong enough. But it would make someone think twice and hopefully they'd ask Mum which door was the toilet. While partying, Mum would forget to warn the guests. The bookshelf now stood flush against the doorway, and Shelby walked back to her bed. Next door, the boombox was turned up, and what sounded like Bon Jovi was sneaking under the door. She quickly got under her covers as she heard screaming and laughter blending together, which sounded like witches at a carnival. She placed the warm comfort of the old headphones over her ears. The muffled silence sounded like a large conch shell being placed by her ears at the beach. It comforted her. Searching through the old CDs that were all her mum's, she found Nevermind by Nirvana. She opened the old CD player, wiped the CD on her Rolling Stones t-shirt and placed it in. The loud intro of Smells Like Teen Spirit carried her away. The violent pounding of the snare intro matched the beat of her heart. She lay back angry. Happy, though, that she could no longer hear her mum pretending to be someone she was not. She hated these nights. Hated them. She was scared and annoyed. Scared of what the night might become. Annoyed that her mum did not know better. Shelby closed her eyes and drifted. She was asleep by track 2. Shelby was dreaming of floating babies being kicked into floating football goals when she woke and heard the second-to-last track, Something in the Way, being played. She thought, what an absurd dream, when she lay back even further into her pillow. She stared at the ceiling as the song helped her feel tired again and her eyelids grew heavy. She fell into a deep sleep, not hearing the front door slam as visitors left quickly. As the next and final track played on the album, she didn't hear the argument that ensued between Mum and her boyfriend. Both of them were drunk and drug-fueled out of their brains. The jealous rage that came from her mum as she accused her boyfriend of being attracted to the lady who had just left. The angry retaliation by the boyfriend. The slap from Mum. The shouting and screaming by the end of the song. And finally, the punches. Shelby missed it all as she dreamt this time of babies making purchases at the local dairy. buying everything that the dairy had to offer. She was laughing in her sleep as the album finished, and there was silence in both her room and also the room next door. The silence was enough to wake Shelby. She opened her tired eyes and stared at the ceiling. The shapes of the lava lamp caused different coloured circles to entwine. Her eyelids started to feel weighted as they sluggishly blinked for a second before closing. "Shelby," whispered a male voice from the other side of her door. "Shelby, are you awake?" Shelby's eyes fully opened. She had never heard anyone talk to her this late at night, apart from her mum. "Shelby," whispered the voice again. She heard something push against the door, like the slight brush of a shoulder. She quickly pushed the headphones off her head. They became entangled in her hair as she tried to take them off quietly. "Shelby," said the male voice again. She could hear more force being pushed against the door. The bookshelf started to angle backwards. A few books at the top looked like they were about to fall out. She read the label on one, The Stand by Stephen King. It was a large book and would make a loud sound. She finally got the headphones off her head and backed off to the side of her bed. She moved quickly, her head darting both ways, looking for something in the room that she could use as a weapon. "Shelby." "I'm coming in," announced her mother's boyfriend, his voice more certain. She panicked and was now standing with the wall behind her. Her heart was beating frantically. She was tough, but still learning. This had never happened before. Someone was trying to get into her room, and she was frozen. Frozen in panic. Frozen in fear. The door was shoved roughly forward. It moved an inch as the Stephen King book fell and hit the ground. The noise was deafening in the silence and then stopped in an instant. Shelby thought he must be checking to see if it woke Mum. "Where the hell is Mum?" thought Shelby. Probably asleep. Drunk. She hated her mum right now. She hated her with a passion. Nothing happened for a minute as Shelby stood shaking, unable to move. "Shelby, are you okay? Are you asleep, darling?" asked the boyfriend in a hushed tone. She hated when he called her mum darling. Why the fuck is he calling me darling? He pushed against the door. The bookshelf angled even more. Out fell more books. The children's book, Where the Wild Things Are. A hardcover novel of Treasure Island. "Come on, Shelby. Move," she thought to herself. But she could not. She had never been so terrified in her life. The door started rattling. It was being pushed frenziedly back and forth, ramming against the bookshelf, which finally gave in, falling over onto its back. The door was forced again, but wouldn't budge. It was now barred between the fallen bookcase, bed, and doorway. A foot and hand now appeared. Shelby let out a small shriek. She started to cry. Suddenly thoughts that a 12-year-old shouldn't have were flooding her brain. Her mature head filled with images, and she started to tremble and shake even more. "Shelby, I can hear you, darling," he said in his creepy, whispering voice. She saw him try to squeeze his forehead through the door, but the door wasn't far enough ajar. She scanned the room and saw a plate and knife in the corner. She had left it there from her dinner earlier. The knife. She willed herself to move and get it. The bed started to inch toward her. The doorway opened a little further. She saw his horrible mouth. Shelby? Honey? She felt like vomiting. I can't move, she thought to herself. I can't fucking move. She saw the knife. It stared back at her like an alluring piece of chocolate. Her favourite, a chocolate pineapple lump. Come on, legs! Move! Nothing happened. The door shook again, and the bed was now squeezing against her trembling knees. Shelby, are you cold? Honey, asked the boyfriend. She started crying. She prayed. She didn't believe in God. She and her mum had never been to church, but she had read about God. In so many of her novels, the fight was always between good and evil. She prayed like someone who was lying on their final deathbed. She prayed like God was her best friend and he was always listening. She prayed that the boyfriend would vanish, that he would just disappear. What else could she ask for? What else could she pray for? The door pushed against the bookshelf, and she felt the pain in her knees. The door now was far enough ajar for the boyfriend to get through. She closed her eyes as she heard him rush through the open doorway. Tears were now streaming down her cheeks. Her body was uncontrollably shaking, but still frozen. Her breathing was frantic. She felt like she was going to faint. She tried to take her mind somewhere else. She tried to join the babies in the dairy, buying all the food they could. She waited for the horrible touch of the drunk boyfriend. She waited for it to happen. She pressed herself hard, backwards against the back wall, hoping to somehow fall through it. She felt a breath, hot on her neck. She turned her face away from it. It disgusted her. She felt warm, sweaty hands start to touch her waist. She screamed and acted, her hands flailing and pushing the boyfriend away. But her hands only felt air as she fell forward onto the bed. The space was completely noiseless. Her eyes opened. Her breathing was still heavy. She was still hyperventilating. The room was deserted. The boyfriend gone. Has my prayer been answered? She thought. Has God answered the prayer of a scared, helpless 12-year-old? She stood motionless for a good 5 minutes, not believing that the prayer had worked. Finally, she could move her foot. Finally, she walked slowly towards the knife. She moved like her feet had the weight of solid concrete. Silently and slowly, just in case the boyfriend was hiding and waiting to jump on her. She slowly picked up the knife, then swiftly turned, expecting to be attacked. The knife defending her womanhood. But no attack took place. There was no evil boyfriend jumping at her. She walked quietly towards the door, stepping over the books and bookcase. She squeezed between the door jamb, holding the knife out in front of her. She walked into the kitchen and lounge. There were beer cans and bottles everywhere. A large empty bottle of vodka was toppled over on the main table. On the oven, she noticed a saucepan with a knife on it. A huge party had taken place, but there seemed to be no survivors. she walked into the lounge, expecting to see her mum splayed out on the couch, drunk. She was not there. Outside, she heard a car crash into another. An alarm rang out. She ran to the window and looked out. A car had crashed into a traffic light. The traffic light was blinking orange, then red, then green. The car door was open, but no one is sitting in the driver's seat. Shelby immediately turned again, with her knife still leading the way, still not believing that the boyfriend just up and left. She checked her room again. Nothing. She then checked the bathroom, her mum's room, and the lounge once more. They were all empty of souls. Outside, the car alarm was ringing loudly. A burst water main from further down the street joined in the racket. Shelby was still shaking. She ran to the main door and opened it. Looking down the dimly lit, narrow corridor that always smelled of urine, she saw no one and heard nothing. She closed the door and locked it. Walking back into the lounge, she found her mum's phone. Why would Mum leave without a phone? Where had they gone? Did Mum wake and take the boyfriend away? Could she do that? Was she strong enough? Shelby sat with the knife still stuck in her trembling right hand. What the fuck is going on? She sat in the same position for most of the night, waiting for her mum to call, waiting for the door to open, waiting for a police car to meet the alarm of the car outside, waiting for the water to stop from the burst water main. She waited for something to happen. Anything. Nothing did. Chapter 1. The Night of Fire. Hell is empty, and all the devils are here. William Shakespeare. Michael drove the car slowly through the narrow streets. The roads in places were cracked and overgrown with long grass. It was not unusual to come across a car left in the middle of the road. He drove with his tired eyes, straining to see what was in front. It was the middle of the night. Every now and then he would turn on the headlights to give him an idea of what was ahead. He wouldn't leave the lights on for long, though, for fear of attracting a night creature that would surely bring their doom. He had his headphones on. The sound of OK Go's track, Here It Goes Again, playing on his Walkman, was thrashing into his eardrums. He was trying to keep himself awake while not disturbing the girls. Teresa, Michael's wife, tapped him on the shoulder. Michael pulled his left ear cushion down. The song came booming out into the car from his left ear pad. "We can all hear that, honey," said Teresa, with a straight face. "It's good, ain't it?" shouted Michael, smiling, one ear still hearing the ear-splitting music. "Want me to turn it up?" he asked. Knowing the answer, he turned it off. She kissed his cheek as a thank you. He smiled at her, loving having his beautiful wife back beside him. "If you need a rest, I can take over," offered Teresa. "It's okay. I've got it." "Where are you taking us?" asked Teresa. Her body curled up uncomfortably in her small seat. "I'm not sure. I'm thinking maybe the houses up on the hill. You see up ahead? It would be safer up there." "What about home?" asked Teresa. as she yawned and placed her hand on Michael's lap. He smiled at her and flicked on the lights again, showing a curved road coming up. "Home is long gone, Mum," remarked Lucy from the back seat. Michael looked up at the mirror, catching Lucy's eyes. Her arms were raised, stretching. She yawned also. "Hello, sleepyhead." Michael smiled as his eyes went back onto the turning street. He placed his hand on Teresa's, turning off the lights once the car had finished winding up the long bend. "The house is long gone?" asked Teresa. "Long gone," answered Michael. He turned her way. "Everyone vanished, Teresa. A year ago or more. Everyone just disappeared." "Gone," said Lucy. "Poof!" Shelby joined in, sitting in the back seat by Lucy. She was patting Pup's head. Pup's tails were flickering slightly. I vanished. You, and I thought Lucy as well, were gone. Just disappeared." "I turned up later, Mum," said Lucy, as she looked out the window trying to make out shadows and shapes. "And those creatures, those monsters that we saw back at the house. I had a guy once say to me, 'The earth has been cleansed, and we have been chosen,'" Lucy said, turning her head from the window towards Michael. "It was cleansed all right. Cleansed of all the shit," said Shelby, matter-of-factly. Teresa looked at Michael worriedly. "That being we saw, it said we wouldn't survive." "We're not supposed to survive, Teresa. Look, as crazy as it sounds, I don't think we should say anything to anybody about what happened." Michael looked between the mirror at the girls and Teresa. "No one's going to believe that we were visited by an engineer or architect who brought you all back to life and gave us a second chance." "A fucking blue angel," interrupted Shelby, smiling cheekily. "Thank you, Shelby." "A blue angel," repeated Michael. "Blue angel?" asked Lucy quietly, looking over at Shelby for help. "Pinocchio," answered Shelby, fluttering her hands on either side of her shoulders. Michael carried on. "No one's going to believe a blue angel visited us and made us into real boys." "Girls," corrected Shelby. "Exactly," agreed Michael, smiling at Shelby. "We don't say anything about the blue angel unless someone brings up the blue angel first. Get it?" "Got it," answered Shelby. Teresa and Lucy remained quiet, with serious faces. The car went soundless as Michael turned on the lights again. He swerved past a Mini Cooper sitting on the left side of the road. The car made a swishing sound as it flew past it. He turned the lights off again. "Did they vanish all the animals as well?" asked Teresa. "Yep," answered Lucy. "And they created these new creatures." "Yep," said Lucy again. "So we were like a virus that needed to be eradicated?" "Fucking A," Shelby shot back. "How come you survived, Michael? And the girls?" "I imagine they're not perfect. A small percentage of people survived," Michael replied, as he flicked on the lights just in time to see a large truck in the middle of the road. He drove to the left of it and turned off the lights. "And I suppose the creatures are meant to kill us?" asked Teresa. "I think they're just the new breed. Some are pretty vicious. Some like Pup here. A cute as pie, smiled Michael. Pup's tails started to flicker when he heard his name. His butt started to lift and Shelby pushed it back down. But you're right, Teresa. This world is meant to kill us and should not be taken lightly. This world will change us. In fact, I think we need to change or we won't survive. And that being said, we won't get a second chance. Teresa looked out the window. Lucy was staring at Michael with almost fear on her face. Shelby was nodding in agreement. I have a question for you and the girls, added Michael. Hit me, replied Teresa, her leg shifting, trying to get comfortable. Can you remember anything after you vanished, or in the girls' cases were killed? Michael looked up in the mirror at the girls. I remember the pain, answered Shelby. Thankfully, it was quick. The way I went. But I remember the horrible pain. Lucy? Asked Michael. Same, Dad. It hurt. I remember not being able to breathe. I remember your face. Lucy's face started to change. That's unlucky, remarked Shelby. She smirked, but no one smirked back. You were so sad, Dad. I remember that. Nothing for me either, confirmed Shelby. And me, added Teresa. Michael flicked on the lights. There was nothing in front. He turned them off again. So, it seems, there is no life after death, he said, lost in thought. The car went silent. Michael drove for a while in a straight line. He noticed a dark shape ahead and flicked on the lights, thinking it was another car. The lights came on to reveal a large monstrosity staring straight at the car. It looked almost asleep, but once the lights came on, it bared its sharp teeth and let out a screaming roar. Pup came to life in the back seat and started barking. Teresa placed her hand on the dashboard, bracing herself. Her mouth was wide open. Michael screamed with the monster and tried to push his foot hard on the brake. His foot slipped off the side and accidentally pushed into the accelerator, speeding the car hard into the creature's front. The monster flinched a little but did not move, its tough hide easily stopping the car. It raised its front paw in response and smashed it into the bonnet. Teresa screamed, "Michael! Michael!" "I'm here!" shouted Michael, trying to push down the airbag that had gone off. Teresa's airbag did not release. The massive paw pushed further into the bonnet, pushing the car down and backward. "Kids!" yelled Michael. "I'm no kid!" shouted Shelby, opening the back door as Pup rushed out of the car beside her. "Wait! Pup!" shouted Shelby, not realizing how fast Pup was. "Lucy!" shouted Michael. There was no response. The car suddenly raised a little as the creature tried to release its paw. Its large claw was stuck in the bonnet. Michael felt heat from his side of the car. Pup was doing his little trick, something only Michael had discovered for the first time a few hours ago when Pup saved Michael's life. Pup was releasing a burning, shooting flame from his mouth. Michael could just see the orange flame blurred by the shattered window. The monster roared outside. "Michael! What do we do?" shouted Teresa, panicking. "Get out, Teresa! Get out before more come! Michael! My door!" Teresa screamed. She had both hands on the handle. It was stuck. The car again shook. The creature was trying to release itself. The car rose and fell, rose and fell. It felt like a roller coaster attraction ride. The car finally fell to the ground and remained still. Outside, heavy footsteps and movement could be felt. The creature was free. Flames were rushing through the night air in streams. Teresa's door suddenly flew open. "Come on, girl!" shouted Shelby as she released and opened Teresa's door. "My seatbelt!" shouted Teresa. "Oh, Jesus!" Shelby reached over behind Teresa and released the belt. Grabbing Teresa, she threw her out of the car. Michael's face showed a little surprise at how strong and efficient Shelby was for a little 13-year-old. Michael finally pushed the airbag to the side and opened his door, falling out on all fours onto the warm asphalt. He looked up and couldn't believe what he saw in front of him. Pup was running from side to side, his back legs raised. Flame was gushing out of his mouth like a fireman with his hose. The creature in front of him was towering, like something out of a dinosaur movie. It moved violently, swaying its huge head left and right. It was enormous, heavy, and strong. It felt the tremendous heat from Pup. Its reptilian skin was lit up by the flames. It screamed in pain. Michael knew he didn't have much time. The flames would bring more creatures to them, more hunters. They would be swarming around them, just like they did when he raised fireworks to the heavens. "Shelby!" Michael screamed. Shelby was helping Teresa get up. "Lucy!" he shouted. Shelby instantly knew what Michael meant as she ran to the back of the car and pulled the rear door open. Lucy was unconscious. Releasing her seatbelt, Shelby dragged Lucy out of the car. Michael rushed around to help when he noticed shadows coming out from the sides of the streets. "Shelby!" he screamed. "Teresa! Run!" Teresa could see the movement. She recognized the danger. "Which way?" she shouted. "Away from here!" Michael shouted back. Shelby pointed out a way for Teresa to run, an alleyway between two large houses. "Are you?" asked Teresa. "I'm okay. I've got her," answered Shelby. Teresa turned and ran. Michael flew around the rear of the car, kneeling beside the girls. "I've got Lucy, Shelby. Run for your life. Get out of here!" The shadows behind Michael were coming into focus. Some of the same creatures Shelby had seen earlier in the night. Others are new and scarier. They were attracted like moths to a flame, attracted to Pup's light show. Michael picked up the unconscious Lucy. Shelby watched as he ran back around the car, running to get Pup. "Shelby!" Michael shouted again. "Fucking run!" Shelby was shaken by the power of a swear word. She turned and ran to the alleyway where Teresa had just disappeared. Turning back around, she saw Pup, brave Pup, darting back and forth, blowing his huge flame at the large monster. Michael was shouting at Pup. He was holding Lucy over his shoulder. She couldn't make out what he was saying because of the noise that was growing steadily louder, the noise she recognized from before. The symphony of creatures. They were surrounding the car. She thought Michael, Pup, and Lucy wouldn't stand a chance. "There's too many." She ran a few steps towards them when she heard something click beside her, a low sound. She instantly darted to the right and felt something pass in front of her. She felt a breath of air swoosh past her face. She turned to the left and saw the end of a tail. It was at the end of its flight circle and the sting had been released. Thankfully, it narrowly missed her face. A snarl came from the darkness and quick movement. "Oh, fuck this!" she said, as she turned and ran for the alleyway. Suddenly, a noise came from the darkness ahead. Something large was moving towards her. "Oh, shit!" she yelped as she turned to the left and ran along the bank. Quickly looking for a break to her right where she could disappear, she heard a distant scream. "Pup! No!" Recognizing it as Michael, when she heard something breathing loudly behind her. "Oh, shit! No!" she said aloud as she sprinted between fence lines. Her breathing was getting louder. Something flew past her cheek, again missing her. "No! Fucking way!" she screamed as she darted between another fence line and ran out onto a back street. She had never run so fast. She didn't know if the creature or creatures were still behind her. She didn't slow down to find out. She just kept running and running. She ran down another side street, down 2 more alleyways before jumping a fence and running towards the back entrance of a 2-story house. She tried the handle. The door opened. She ran in and closed it. She searched for a lock. Nothing. Outside, she heard a noise, like a dog running into a rubbish bin. She backed away from the door, disappearing into the shadows. The house was quiet, dark. It reminded her of the nights she and Michael spent alone together, lost in shadows, with the lights turned out, reading by candlelight. She thought of Michael, of Pup. "Oh, shit," she whispered. "Poor Lucy." Unconscious, and Teresa. My God! Teresa! It happened so quickly. 1 minute they were together. The next, total chaos. She threaded her hands through her hair. She'd felt like this before, long ago. Her hands trembled. Her body was shaking. The adrenaline was running through her. She heard something move, like a flap being opened. A cat door? She thought. Jesus, she whispered to herself. Is there no end to this? She backed away from the noise, seeing a flight of stairs to the next level. Something scampered across the kitchen's vinyl floor. She stood still, not wanting to move, not wanting to give away to whatever it was her whereabouts. She waited. She heard nothing. She took a step. Something moved. She stopped. Her eyes closed hard while she listened intently. She tried to hold her breath, tried to be quiet. She waited again. No sound. She took another step backwards. Nothing. She took a step up the staircase. She felt like she was being watched. A second step. The stairs made a large creaking sound. Something breathed beside her. "Ah!" screamed Shelby as she turned and sprinted up the steps. She could hear it following. It was fast, its noises strange and unearthly. She got to the top, her arms raised in panic. It was so dark she couldn't make out the doors. There was a light break at the end. It shone on a door that must be the bathroom or the master bedroom. She ran for it. Fast! Whatever it was behind her shot out from the stairwell and smashed into the wall. She screamed, "Fuck you!" as she sprinted for the door. Opening the door, she ran into the bathroom and slammed the door behind her. There was a lock. "Thank God," she whispered. As she locked the door, it hit the door low. Small claws could be heard scratching and clawing the floor under the door. Again, Shelby backed away from the door. She tried to be as quiet as she could possibly be. Her legs were moving slowly, the claws scratching the floor, searching for her. I'd rather be dead, she thought. Her legs felt the edge of the toilet as she collapsed on the fur-covered seat. Somehow it felt comforting. She sat, watching the claws moving. Beside her, she noticed a shower curtain. She grabbed it tightly, trying to stop the trembling in her hands. Her breathing was slowing. She took in a large breath and filled her lungs. She slowly released the breath. It calmed her. She sat, watching the claws, scratching the floor, for over an hour. Chapter 2. The Wild Land. You won't know until you go there. Go to the one place on earth where the truly wild things are. Rachel Brewer. 1. Shelby felt the warm sun streaming through the bathroom window. She raised her hand and let it bathe in its warmth. It felt good. She had survived the night. The scratching under the door stopped at around 1 a.m. She heard the creature scuttering down the stairs shortly after. Later, she heard what she thought was the cat door flip and flop as the creature disappeared outside. She hated this world. But she was alive. She worried about her adopted family, Michael, Teresa, Lucy, and brave Pup. Shelby hadn't slept. She'd sat patiently waiting for the sun to rise, her fingers curling on the furry toilet seat. She knew with the sun came warmth. Warmth and safety. When she lived with Michael, most of the action occurred at night, whether it be outside noises or just animal activity. Either the animals hated the sun or they were nocturnal. It was early morning, around 5:30. She had time to search the house for food, re-energize, and then try to find her way back to the car and hopefully back to where everyone should be waiting. You can only hope. Shelby unlocked the toilet door and made her way down the stairs. This was part of the new world she loved. She was always a loner, even before the old world had exorcised its demons. She enjoyed searching empty houses, looking around at old photos, finding out what the owners were into, learning. You could learn a lot from the secrets a house would give away. For instance, in this house, they had a special love for rabbits. A small makeshift fence had been made in the living room. There was still straw on the floor and upside-down water bottles. The house had a certain musty animal smell, even after all this time. You could also tell that the family loved to hunt. There were awards on the cabinets for heaviest kill. Shelby's first thought after seeing these awards was gun. She searched a few of the cabinets but found nothing. A locked cupboard held what she was after, though. Breaking the lock, she found a box that read Glock 42, the Mighty Mini, and a few boxes of rounds. Yes, please, she thought, as she smiled and even started whistling. Walking over to the kitchen, she opened the pantry door. A smell of something rotten filled her nose. Her stomach was rumbling, but everything here was tainted. She would have to miss breakfast. She turned the tap as water spat and spluttered before coming out in a steady stream. She placed her hand under the tap, making a funnel, and drank deeply. "Fuck yeah," she said happily, as her stomach felt replenished. She didn't realise how dehydrated she was. All that running last night had drained her. Walking to the door, she noticed a satchel hanging on a hook. It was a leather bag with straps. "Thank you very much," said Shelby as she filled it with her gun and bullets. Walking out into the bright sunlight, she felt reasonably positive. Things seemed to be going her way. Walking out onto the street, things weren't so easy. "Shit! Which way did you come from?" she asked herself out loud. She remembered jumping a fence, but it was all a bit of a haze. Everything had happened so quickly. Maybe, if I pop into another house and grab some food, it might come back to me. She laughed as she opened another door to an empty house and walked in. "Hello, Shelby here. Just after some food and I'll be on my way." She walked in happily, whistling. This house was well kept. It looked extremely modern. She went straight to the kitchen and opened the pantry doors. She found a few cans of baked beans and one of chili beans. "Bingo," she said, smiling broadly. Eating one can, she placed the other two in her satchel for later. Walking back out into the sun, she remembered which way to go. "See? I told you, Shelby. Food feeds the brain." 2. She walked quickly in the direction of the car. Shelby finally came to the alleyway where she remembered sending Teresa down. She called out her name. "Teresa! Teresa! It's me! Shelby!" The calls were half-hearted. She was still worried about alerting the wrong sort of animal. She walked between the buildings, remembering how different everything was last night. Where the hell do all these creatures go during the day? She thought as she walked out onto the road. Her nose could instantly smell the afterburn of Pup's flame-breathing prowess. It smelt like a house had just been burnt down. She saw the car sitting in the middle of the road, its bonnet pushed down and smashed in. All the windows around the car were shattered. She slowly walked to the vehicle, keeping an eye out for any movement, hoping that Michael, Teresa, or Lucy might be waiting for her. She stood by the car and searched the area by sight. There were black scorch marks on the road. Pup had put up a mighty battle, but no sign of Pup. She noticed further up the road was a small pile of black mess. She walked closer to it but couldn't make head or tails of it. It just looked like melted rubbish. It had a smell of freshly burnt plastic. She heard an engine in the distance. Running back to the car, she knelt down beside it and looked in the direction of the arriving car. She could make out two people in the front. One looked like Lucy. The car looked like a large ute. Could it be Michael? "Fuck it, it must be," she said out loud. She hopped out from behind the car and started waving the car down. Immediately, she could see Lucy waving back at her excitedly. Shelby's waving started to slow and stop as she came to realise the guy driving was not Michael. The car pulled up beside her and the window wound down. "Shelby!" Lucy shouted excitedly. "I'm so happy to see you!" Yeah, Lucy, me too. Who's this? Asked Shelby, getting straight down to business. Her hands rested on the open window as she glared at the driver, her freckles flushing. He was smiling back at her. He wore aviators and had slick, pulled-back blonde hair. He had a small moustache that was manicured to perfection. Shelby thought he resembled Robin Hood. Howdy, Shelby. My name's Stephen. Pleased to meet you. And you, Stephen. What are you doing with my Lucy? Asked Shelby. Stephen smiled. Helping her? She was by herself a ways back. I just picked her up. It's okay, Shelby. Stephen's friendly, insisted Lucy. Shelby interrupted, whispering, Lucy, what happened? Where's Michael? Teresa, Pup, have you seen them? No, Lucy whispered back, leaning towards Shelby. I haven't seen anyone. I just woke up. I was down the other side of the bank. Down the hill under a bridge. I have no idea what happened. Lucy looked worried. The last thing I remember was us talking about you know what. Stephen's eyebrow lifted as he started rolling up a smoke. Second-hand smoke will kill you. I'll thank you not to smoke in front of Lucy, asserted Shelby. Sure. Sorry, Shelby. Stephen put the packet down. His smile narrowed somewhat. Look, I'm going back to town. Just up the road, really. It's just me and a few friends. We've come down from Rotorua and have been steadily picking people up, strength in numbers and all. We'd be glad to take you both in. Shelby started tapping her fingers on the door. What choice do we have? Asked Lucy, searching Shelby's face. Thanks anyway, Steve-O, but we've got some people we're meeting here. If it's all right with you, Lucy will be staying with me. It's not safe out here, by yourselves, advised Stephen, his head angled, looking like a pin-up model. Shelby, what are you doing? We've got nowhere to stay. I've got a place. It's okay, we'll be fine, answered Shelby. Are you sure? Asked Lucy. I'm sure, Lucy. Shelby opened the door, and Lucy reluctantly got out. Hey, Shelby, shouted Stephen, trying to catch them one last time before they left. I come back this way often. If you want a lift, I'm here to help. Stephen winked and turned on the motor. Thanks, Steve-O. We'll catch you down the road. Yes, you will, replied Stephen, as he saluted them both and drove slowly away. Shelby, what are you doing? That was our lift. I know, Lucy, answered Shelby. But what if your dad comes back here? Your mum? Pup, we've got to leave a sign. Something before we leave. We can't just go. They're still out here. Somewhere. Sure, Shelby. You're right. Sorry, I wasn't thinking. My head really hurts. It's okay, Lucy. We've just got to be careful with who we trust. There's no law out here to save us. He was pretty handsome, though, winked Lucy, smiling. Shelby ignored Lucy's remark and looked at the houses sandwiching the alley. Let's see if we can find something we can write with. Shelby and Lucy searched the garages from the neighbouring houses and found some white spray paint. Within a few minutes, Shelby had written on the road in huge letters, "Lucy and Shelby nearby. Honk the car horn. That'll get their attention." "You never know. They might turn up when we're sleeping," said Shelby. Lucy smiled. "Good thinking." "Thanks, Lucy. How's the head?" "Sore." "Hungry, Lucy?" "Definitely. I've got some cans of food. Let's pick a house nearby and I'll tell you what happened last night." "Okay," replied Lucy, as they walked towards the houses. Shelby chose a 3-story apartment. It looked over the street but was a house back from the road. She felt it would be safer than picking the obvious house right next to the accident. Just in case. The house was extremely comfy, all the mod cons. Not that they could use them without power. They mixed up the can of beans and chili beans and ate their lunch. Once full, they both walked to the 3rd story and sat by the window. The room was the master bedroom with an ensuite. It had a high ceiling, but being the 3rd story was extremely warm. They both stared at the car. "Hey, Shelby. Hard to believe. A large dinosaur stood on our car," Lucy said, smiling. Shelby started laughing. Lucy started laughing with her. "Yeah. And it was fighting our flying dog, which breathed fire," added Shelby. Lucy started laughing even harder. "Wait! Stop! I just ate chili beans!" Oh, Shelby burst out laughing. "I can't breathe! I can't breathe!" Oh, yelled Lucy as she ran for the toilet. "Go downstairs, Lucy! How's my not flush?" shouted Shelby, still laughing hard. Oh, I'm not going to make it. I'm not going to make it," replied Lucy, half laughing, as she ran down the stairs, her hands clenching her butt cheeks. Shelby's laughing started to subside. She liked Lucy. She had Michael's sense of humour. She was a little naive, but as Michael had stated, they'd better change in this world or get eaten by it. Lucy would learn quickly, Shelby hoped. Her eyes went back to the car. There was no movement. Nothing was happening. Just the back and forth swinging of the long grass and the slight breeze. She looked at her watch. It was 3:12. When Lucy got back, she thought it would be time to lock the house down, close everything up and shut themselves up on the 3rd floor. If Michael was alive, he would know better than to come out this late in the afternoon. Teresa might still try it, but they'd hear the car horn. She smiled when she thought of it. Not a bad idea. She got up, stretched, farted. Those chili beans are dangerous. And walked down the stairs. 3. It was 5 p.m. and the sun was going down quickly. Lucy was closing the curtains and Shelby had just closed and locked the front door. There was no way anything was going to get inside. The house had been unlocked for over a year, and it didn't look like anyone or anything had been in there anyway. The house was immaculate. Searching the pantry, Shelby had found a packet of still sealed crackers and plenty of flavoured chips, enough to fill their bellies for a week. They were the spicy variety, so the downstairs toilet was the safest place to go. Walking up to the master bedroom, Shelby had picked a novel to start from the bookcase. Lucy had chosen one too. They only had an hour left of natural light before they'd be forced to go to sleep. Turning on a torch or burning a candle was only asking for trouble. She'd learnt that from previous nights with Michael. As the night got closer and it became harder to read, Shelby started to chat with Lucy. Lucy, how long were you by yourself for when everybody disappeared? I don't know, Shelby. Maybe 2 months? 3 at the most. Were you afraid being by yourself? I wasn't by myself. I was kidnapped. Fuck off, said Shelby, unbelieving. True fact, Lucy replied, nonchalantly as she turned the page of her book. Shelby shook her head. No one left in the world, and you get yourself kidnapped. I know. I'm lucky that way, professed Lucy, looking Shelby's way but still with her nose in her book. Shelby laughed. I wrote it in my diary, said Lucy. Really? Really? Want me to tell you about it? Nah, I'll buy the book. Thanks, though, replied Shelby. Lucy laughed. It's getting dark, observed Shelby, as she dropped her book and walked over to the 2 seats they placed by the large window. Lucy said nothing. No sign of Michael and Teresa. Lucy put her book down. Shelby noticed. I'm sure they're out there somewhere, Lucy. Lucy came over and sat by Shelby. We'll find them. Promise. Lucy rested her head on Shelby's shoulder as they looked at the broken car in the middle of the road. The shadows of the late sun had disappeared, swapped now by mid-grey tones. Shelby put her hand softly on Lucy's head as she fell asleep. 4. Shelby woke up startled to a voice shouting, I'm not dead! I'm alive! I'm fucking alive! Shelby stumbled out of her chair and stood upright, like a karate junior ready for a lesson. I'm alive! See, dead? Dead? Lucy mumbled. Her voice trailed off as she fell back to sleep. Jesus, whispered Shelby. Lucy was not sitting by Shelby anymore. She had made her way to the double bed and was tucked up snugly under the blankets. Her outburst and resulting movement had pushed some of the cover off of Lucy. Shelby quietly walked over and placed the cover back on Lucy. She whispered, swearing, at Lucy and smiled. Suddenly, something was knocked over outside. It sounded like a rubbish bin being pushed over and the lid rolling after it. Shelby stood paralysed by the bed, her hand holding the cover. She listened. The loud noise was traded to a soft breeze and the sound of wind escaping through a window that wouldn't quite close. Fuck, breathed out Shelby, as she let go of the covers and quietly walked back to the window. She peered out and searched the moonlit, familiar area. Nothing seemed different. The broken car still looked vanquished and lonely. Her stomach grumbled. She knew what it meant. She needed to go to the toilet. Maybe I can hold it. The idea of going downstairs in the dark was not an attractive one. It grumbled again, but this time, noisy liquid forced its way down her middle. "Oh, Jesus," she whispered. "Fucking chili beans." She turned and looked at the door. The key sat in the hole. The door was safely locked. She looked at the ensuite bathroom. Would Lucy mind? She probably would, and I don't want to wake her. Shelby walked towards the door and quietly turned the key. The door made a clicking sound, and Shelby opened it, revealing darkness. She stood waiting for her eyes to adjust. A cold breeze came up from downstairs, and instantly Shelby had visions of burst windows and opened doors. She took a backward step. Her stomach minced in protest. Okay, she conceded. Finally, her eyes adjusted, and she could make out the hallway that led downstairs. She remembered the thing shooting out from the stairwell yesterday and waited just a little longer before taking her first step. The floor creaked under her. She stood still and listened. She could hear nothing from downstairs. The only sound was what her imagination could come up with. She took another step, and another, and another, and stopped. She was now further away from the bedroom than it was to go downstairs. She felt lost in limbo. Something banged outside, and instantly her hands sprung up on either side. "Fuck me!" she groaned. She could not move. "I just want to go to the fucking toilet." A bead of sweat dripped down her forehead. Something fell over downstairs. It was inside. She panicked. She listened for more noise. 6 low, familiar, gruesome clicks sounded from downstairs. Or was it outside? She couldn't tell, and her mind was playing games. Her body was ready to run. "Shelby!" barked Lucy. Shelby instantly jumped to attention, like a cat being shocked. Lucy sleepily stood at the doorway, looking at Shelby. Lucy yawned. "What are you doing, Shelby?" she asked, rubbing her half-closed eyes. Shelby ran. As fast as she could, she ran back to the bedroom, shoving Lucy, who went tumbling backwards onto the double bed and then disappeared comically over the side, out of sight. Shelby slammed the door behind her and locked it. She then ran into the ensuite bathroom, shutting the door behind her, shouting, "I'm using the fucking bathroom and I don't fucking care." Lucy sat up, still half asleep. "You just had to ask," she said calmly, as she tried to smooth her wild hair down. 5. Shelby lay beside Lucy for most of the night, her eyes open, looking at the door. For the second night in a row, she could not sleep. Visions of creatures and monsters invaded her thoughts. Creepy creatures that were distorted and full of gunk. She could feel the veins in her eyes straining. The corners of her eyes were heavy. But, alas, sleep would not come. Not until the sun started to rise, and finally, her eyes closed and she fell into a deep sleep. Lucy woke and yawned and stretched her arms. Creatures that sounded like birds were making noises outside, and the dawning sun was up. "Morning, Shelby," said Lucy cheerily. "No," answered Shelby in protest. "What's that, Shelby?" "Nothing." Shelby rose and sat on the side of her bed, her shoulders hunched forward, her eyes staring sideways into an empty void. "Good sleep?" asked Lucy, a spring in her voice. "The best," answered Shelby dryly, as she got up and went straight into the bathroom, closing the door behind her. "Mine was good too," added Lucy cheerfully. Shelby finished washing her face and decided it was a waste of time trying to sleep while the sun was up. She knew she couldn't do it and her body would just rebel. She would sleep when she was ready. She opened the bathroom door and saw that Lucy had already unlocked the bedroom door and was downstairs making noises. Rushing out into the hallway, Shelby ran downstairs into the kitchen. "Found some peaches," said Lucy, opening a can. "And look, spaghetti!" Shelby smiled as she turned and inspected the lounge area. Everything looked fine. The noises from last night must have been her imagination, or they came from outside. She sighed and collapsed on a stool behind the kitchen bench. "Tired?" asked Lucy, as she splashed the peaches into 2 bowls. "I feel hopeful today, Shell. I feel like Mum and Dad are going to toot that horn." Shelby had her head resting, rarely in her crossed arms, her heavy eyes poked above the small hairs of her arms. "You know, sometimes you just have that feeling. Positivity. It radiates through you. Do you ever feel like that? Like that rainbow glow is filling up your soul." Lucy joyfully spun in a circle and slid Shelby's plate toward her. It hit Shelby's elbow. Shelby was fast asleep, snoring. Shelby woke up on the kitchen stool. Saliva was running down between her arms. Her face was warm, sweaty, and compressed, with wrinkles on the side she had slept on. She straightened her spine and felt a pain in her lower back. She had slept awkwardly. The peaches Lucy had prepared were still in front of her. What time is it? She looked outside the kitchen window. It looked like dusk. The sun was setting. Shelby had slept most of the day. She ate the peaches quickly and ran up the stairs. "Lucy?" No answer. She ran into the bedroom. "Lucy?" Again, no answer, and no sign of her. She ran to the window and looked out by the car. There, reading a book, sitting on top of the demoralized car, was Lucy. Shelby pushed open the window. "Lucy!" Lucy looked up. "What the fuck are you doing?" shouted Shelby. Lucy frowned a little and lifted her book. "Reading! It's not safe out there, Lucy." "I'm fine. I've been waiting for Mum and Dad all day. Just in case." Shelby sighed. "That's nice, Lucy. But could you please come back inside?" Lucy's body language gave a signal of being annoyed as she reversed her legs down from the car and lazily walked back to the house, looking like a school kid who had just been told off. After a while, Lucy came upstairs. Shelby was still looking out the window, noticing the broken car's left wheel was punctured. Rubber was hanging off the centre hub in pizza-sized pieces. It looked like some creature had been eating it. "We've got to be careful, Lucy." Lucy said nothing. "You remember what your dad said? We can't be by ourselves. We've got to stick together. Lucy walked over and sat by Shelby. You were very brave out there, Lucy. Fucking brave. Lucy's eyebrow pricked up and she smiled. I'll be careful in the future, Lucy replied. I just don't want to miss them. You know, your dad let off some fireworks back in the day. I remember the story. Just before we rose from the dead, Lucy replied, doing her best impression of a mindless, walking zombie, her hands raised, with wailing vocal renditions. Maybe we get some fireworks and light one up each night, just in case they're lost, suggested Shelby, looking out at the vast landscape with worry. Just one. Each night. Just one. 6. That night, Lucy and Shelby slept heavily. Both were snoring loudly. The night was unusually uneventful. In the morning, they ate another can of fruit each, and Shelby laid out the plans to Lucy. I reckon we grab a car and head for the closest town. There's bound to be a warehouse close by. Sounds good. But we can't drive, Shelby. I can, Lucy. Have you driven before? No. How hard could it be? Lucy and Shelby sat in a 2012 Dodge Journey. They found the key sitting in a drawer in the house behind the driveway. Okay, let's do this, said Lucy, smiling. Shelby could barely see over the steering wheel. She studied the dashboard and central console. Okay, I give up. Where do I put the fucking key? Lucy and Shelby sat in a 2005 Toyota Corolla. Shelby held the keys in her hand and placed them in the ignition. Easy as, she said. As she turned the key and the motor spluttered and stopped. Lucy remained quiet with silent motivation. This time, my fucking baby, shouted Shelby as the car turned over and roared into life. Shelby had her foot pushed down hard on the accelerator. Oh yeah, yelled Lucy, with her hands raised up in the air with excitement. Shelby looked down at the gear stick. It was a manual. The car, thankfully, had been parked on the side of the road, facing south. I think I'll try. Number fucking 1, said Shelby, referring to the numbers on the gear shift. She pushed the gear stick, and the car made a crunching noise. Ouch, said Lucy. Wait, I'll try this pedal, suggested Shelby, as she luckily pushed in the clutch, and this time the gear stick moved smoothly into a lower gear. Keep it there, shouted Lucy. Suddenly the car moved forward, shook, and then slowed down. Easy, baby, Shelby said to the car as it slowly gyrated up and down. I'll try number 2. Shelby crunched the gears, put her foot in again, and this time the car sped up. Very nice, smiled Lucy, as the car drove randomly left and right down the street. Watch out for traffic. Don't worry, Lucy. I'm the fucking queen for watching out for traffic, shouted Shelby as she changed to third and started to go faster. You're really good at this, Shelby. I told you. I want some music. Lucy searched the CDs, sitting under the radio. Radiohead, baby, said Lucy happily. Oh, come on, replied Shelby. Kid A's first track, Everything in its Right Place. rang out loudly on the sunny streets, as both Lucy and Shelby's heads started nodding. The car was not running smoothly as it jolted up and down every now and then, but the fact that the car was moving made Lucy feel happy that they had achieved something together. She shed a little tear as she and Shelby shared a moment of joy and laughter, mixing with the music. "How do we stop the car?" asked Lucy, her head nodding to the song. "I don't know." "Drive into something?" suggested Shelby. Lucy and Shelby laughed as they wobbled down the street, mumbling loudly the words to a song they didn't know. Shelby felt elated that finally luck seemed to be going their way. "Thelma and Louise, baby!" she shouted. "Who?" asked Lucy. 7. They arrived back late in the afternoon, in a different car, as indeed Shelby had driven into the back of another vehicle in the warehouse car park to stop it. They found an automatic Mazda CX-5 with keys still in it, which Shelby was able to command, and her use of the brake and accelerator made her seem almost professional. They unloaded the boot, which was full of cans of food, water bottles, new clothes, and a box of fireworks, which were mainly skyrockets. Night came quickly as Shelby and Lucy again took their places by the window, watching the subdued car. They both stared at the vehicle for an hour after the light gave up their reading. "Firework, Shelby?" "Why not?" Shelby grabbed a large jar she had by the chair. Placing the rocket she had ready, she pushed the window open and looked over at Lucy. "Want to light it?" "Yes, please." Lucy eagerly grabbed the lighter from the windowsill and held it out by the rocket. "Ready?" asked Lucy, smiling. "Fucking A," smiled Shelby. "For Mum and Dad," said Lucy as she lit the wick. Shelby had a look of sadness after Lucy's words. It quickly changed to euphoria as the skyrocket's wick sparkled. Its taper became smaller as the rocket shook and made a loud bang. It then flew high into the sky and fizzed into a bright light. Both Shelby's and Lucy's mouths were wide open as the street blew out into a brilliant, dazzling light. Darkness came back just as quickly as the light dissipated. They sat watching the streets silently. Just as the last few days had been uneventful, so was this night. They waited for hours until both their eyes were tired. They talked quietly about their lives, about what life was like before everything had changed. It was uneventful outside, but inside, the girls were becoming fast friends. Close friends who needed each other. "We'll try again tomorrow," suggested Shelby. Later, they both slept soundly, feeling safe in their warm, comfy beds. At the same time, unbeknownst to them, outside, spider-like creatures, the size of dogs, were crawling in and out of the forgotten, desolate car. 8. Shelby woke to the room shaking. "It's an earthquake," was her first thought. "Lucy!" she shouted, as Shelby held the bed to keep her balance. Lucy woke up startled. She sat up straight with her arms out wide, trying to keep her balance. "What the hell?" Lucy shouted above the noise. the room was moving from side to side. The bed was angled to 30 degrees and then shook and moved back the other way. The windows were shaking. They are surely going to break, thought Shelby. The bedside drawers fell to the ground as Shelby screamed with shock. "The doorway!" Lucy shouted. They both got up and tried to keep their balance as the floor moved like a conveyor belt. "Holy shit!" Shelby shouted. They were both used to earthquakes coming from Wellington, but they'd never felt anything like this before. Lucy made it to the doorway first and unlocked the door. Shelby walked past the window. She noticed outside the road was moving like a wave on an ocean. The car was shaking and riding it like a surfboard. The movement broke the axle from the back of the car, and the two back wheels separated from the vehicle. "Holy fuck!" Shelby shouted as she swayed forward one step and then took two unbalanced steps backwards. Lucy grabbed her hand and managed to pull Shelby under the doorframe. The house shook and fell slightly, like a sandcastle losing its bottom. "Jesus!" yelled Shelby, as both her and Lucy hugged under the doorframe. They both felt like they were going to die. Then just as abruptly as it had started, everything stopped. "Oh my God," whispered Shelby, still holding Lucy tightly. "I think this world is now trying to shake us dead." Lucy smiled and nodded in agreement, still startled by what had just happened. The earth moved again. The floor picked them both up and dropped them just as unexpectedly. They both screamed. "Aftershock?" Lucy said, her voice loud in the silent aftermath. Something was pushed over downstairs. "Did you hear that?" asked Lucy, her mouth wide open. The night was now soundless, sober after the shock of what had just happened. They listened. A clicking noise broke the silence. "Oh fuck," swore Shelby under her breath. "I fucking hate this." "Shall we lock the door?" Lucy asked quietly. Something made a noise on the bottom step of the stairway. "It's inside," Lucy said in a hushed tone, her face revealing fear. The noise made its way up 5 or so steps. Lucy looked like she was going to scream. Shelby placed her hand on Lucy's mouth. She placed her finger against her lips. She reached over to her satchel, which was sitting on the floor by the doorway, and pulled out the small gun. Lucy's eyes opened wider. Shelby nodded. Shelby stood and grabbed Lucy's hand, pulling her into the room. Lucy stood behind Shelby as Shelby put her fingers on the outer door and started to pull it. The noise moved up a few more steps and clicked again. Shelby pulled back the safety on the gun. She went to close the door quietly. It wouldn't close. The door had shifted in the earthquake. It wouldn't line up. "Fuck," whispered Shelby. "Lucy, get back," she said, as she tried to keep the door as closed as it would allow. She peered out into the hallway, searching for whatever was coming. A black shadow moved. It looked like a narrow leg. It had spikes on it. She couldn't make out the body. Just a long leg like the front claw of a shell-covered crustacean, only bigger and 100 times uglier. She readied herself. "We were due for something," she whispered. The leg planted itself firmly as a large body wavered and then followed it. Shelby couldn't make it out. She heard the clicking noise and smelt a horrible smell of rancid flesh. The creature seemed to be steadying itself, waiting to pounce. It must know food is close by. It moved. Shelby shot it. It hit the door and Shelby fell back. Lucy sprung forward, pushing the door at the creature as liquid squirted into the room from behind it. "Watch out!" warned Lucy. Shelby could see it. She steadied herself, aimed, and shot it 3 times in a row. The creature screamed an alien squeal as liquid again shot into the room, narrowly missing Shelby's face. It backed away from the door. Lucy and Shelby heard it scampering down the stairs, wounded. "Fucker!" shouted Shelby as she chased after it, her gun in front of her. "Shelby, no!" Lucy shouted. It was too late. Shelby was chasing it down the steps. She slid on gunk a few times as she ran down the slime-covered veneer. She could see the creature trying to get out a broken window it must have made its way in from. She shot it again. It squealed. "You weren't fucking invited," Shelby proclaimed as she shot it in the middle of its squelching body and watched it fall limply outside. Something moved behind her. She turned and saw a large shadow standing outside the smashed window. "Want some?" Shelby shouted confidently as she shot the shadow and heard something shriek in pain. Lucy made it downstairs. "Shelby! Are you okay?" Shelby stood with the gun pointed at the window, looking every inch a cowboy. Outside, she could see something trying to get away over the fence. She opened the door, aimed, and hit it. The silent night echoed with the gunshot. Lucy shut the door. "Shelby! Enough!" ordered Lucy in her best teacher voice. Shelby was breathing heavily, lost in her own war. This fucking world. Shelby hissed despairingly. She was sweating heavily. "Shelby, let's get upstairs. Lock ourselves in the bathroom before anything else comes. Shelby, it's not safe." "Huh?" replied Shelby, still hoping for battle. "Shelby, we'll die down here." Lucy's words seemed to shock Shelby awake. "Okay," she replied reluctantly as they made their way back upstairs. Walking into the bedroom, it looked like a bomb had gone off. Liquid was everywhere. The room was a mess of broken items and glass from the earthquake. They grabbed pillows and blankets and made their fort in the bathroom. The door was thankfully locked. They did not sleep. This world would not let them. Shelby remembered what the being had said to Michael. It seemed like so long ago now. "You will probably not survive, Michael Stevenson." Shelby sat next to the door, her gun pointed at it. For the first time, she felt like she knew exactly what the being had meant. As daylight entered the bathroom skylight, Lucy tapped Shelby on the shoulder. Shelby had her head resting on her knee, the gun sitting angled on the other leg. "Shelby? Are you awake?" Shelby lifted her head. "Yes." "You okay, Shelby?" "Yes." "Quite a night." Shelby said nothing. Instead, she sat studying the door. "I think we need to move," proposed Shelby. "You're right. I'm sick of this place anyway," agreed Lucy. Shelby looked up at Lucy as she did her hair looking at the mirror. "We need something better," hinted Lucy, smiling. Shelby did not reply. She opened the door. The room stank. The liquid, which seemed like acid, had melted into the furniture and bedding. They were both stunned by the damage. "Next door?" suggested Lucy. "Why not?" answered Shelby, as she picked up her satchel. Lucy grabbed their books, placing them in Shelby's bag as they went downstairs. The windows were smashed inwards. Glass was everywhere. Opening the back door, they expected to see the creature from last night lying on its back. It was gone. Shelby looked left and right. "How about that one?" asked Shelby, pointing to a far-off house that was another 3-story townhouse. "Love it," answered Lucy. She was holding a box full of their goodies that they had picked up yesterday. They walked over to the fence and opened the gate. Closing it behind them, they started walking together. "It's really nice having you as company, Lucy. Thanks for keeping me sane," Shelby said, not looking at Lucy. "You're welcome," Lucy replied. Nothing more needed to be said. The house they had claimed was not as nice as the one previous. It had a real musty smell due to the lack of light coming in. The curtains had been drawn, and there were cobwebs everywhere. The house, thankfully, was solid though. It had survived the earthquake well. Lucy and Shelby ignored the mess downstairs. Upstairs, they were in a kid's room. The only pieces of furniture were 2 single beds and a small table with smaller chairs. Up on the walls were pictures of Mum, Dad, and 2 kids, 1 boy and 1 girl. "Perfect family," said Shelby. "Looks like it was," Lucy answered. They brought up some chairs from downstairs and sat them in front of a smaller window. They stayed there for 6 nights. They locked the doors and shut the windows as soon as the sun closed its eyes. Each evening the moon woke, they lit and shot 1 firework into the sky. They read their books and stayed by the window. For 6 days in a row, there were no earthquakes, no monsters, no humans, and no sign of Michael and Teresa. On the 7th night, just before they shot another rocket into the heavens, Lucy said, "Do you think Dad might have gone somewhere else?" "Like where?" asked Shelby. "I don't know. Maybe the holiday house?" "You want to go there and check?" asked Shelby. "Nothing's happening here." "The holiday house is all burnt up," Shelby reminded Lucy. "Maybe he left us a message." "Maybe," Shelby agreed, as she shoved the firework out the window. Lucy lit the wick. The rocket shot up into the sky, spraying a kaleidoscope of colours that then fell and danced haphazardly on the saddened car's hood down below. "How about a few more nights, and then we go?" Shelby put forward. "Sure," replied Lucy, smiling. 9. A few nights of nothing happening had passed, so Shelby and Lucy packed the car with enough supplies to last them a few days. They both felt they needed to do something. The burnt-out holiday home where Michael had staged his huge battle a few weeks ago seemed to be the best bet. just in case he or Teresa had made their way back there. If there was no sign of anything, they agreed they would just come back and start searching the surrounding area. Shelby had written on the road and surrounding fences, "Gone to holiday home. Hope you're there. S and L." Enough information for those who needed to know. Shelby indicated to the right as she drove out onto the road. "Road rules," she said to Lucy. "Music?" Lucy smiled while still waking up. She reached for the CDs. "What do you feel like?" asked Lucy. "I have a feeling my choices are going to be limited." "ABBA?" "Why not?" They drove off smoothly. Lucy placed the CD in and the first song started to play. Shelby heard something that didn't seem to be part of the music. "Turn it off," Shelby said sharply. Lucy turned the music off. The car's motor running was the only noise. "What?" "Shh," Shelby interrupted. A car's horn rang out in the far distance. Lucy looked quickly at Shelby, her eyes widening. "It happened again. Honk." Shelby smiled. "Honk. Honk. Honk." "Dad? Mum?" Lucy's hand hovering over her mouth. "Turn around," shouted Lucy excitedly. I'm turning, replied Shelby. Shelby did a 21-point turn and headed back the way they had come. They were both smiling and eager to see who it was. "Fuck me," said Shelby eagerly. "Honk, honk." "Here we go," shouted Lucy, her hands on the dashboard. She was almost standing looking over the coming rise. As the car moved over the hill, their eagerness turned to sadness. As in front of them, they saw the car they instantly recognised. It was Stephen. He was standing outside his car pressing his horn. He smiled and stopped honking and waved as they drove closer. He walked over and placed his hand over Shelby's doorframe. "Howdy, ladies," Stephen said, chewing gum. He had a cowboy hat on. "Glad to see you're still alive." "Of course we're still alive," Shelby retorted. Lucy was smiling at Stephen. Stephen smiled back. "I saw your sign and I thought I'd honk." "We heard," answered Shelby. "Sorry if it wasn't who you were hoping for." "Oh no, it's nice to see you," said Lucy enthusiastically. "You're not who we wanted to see," Shelby said, purposely not looking at Stephen. "I sort of guessed that, sweetie." Shelby rolled her eyes. "Just the boys wanted to invite you girls down to the village. We've set up, it's safe and all." Shelby looked up at Stephen with a straight face. "Just with the earthquake happening, we were worried about you." "Oh, that's so nice, Stephen," said Lucy. "Well, sure. We've got to look after each other." Stephen winked at Lucy. Shelby's eyes winced. "You'd like that, wouldn't you, fucker? Start your little breeding station? Start repopulating the earth? Is that it?" Stephen backed up. "Whoa, little lady. We don't mean no harm. We just thought you might like company." "Like company? I'm sure you'd like our company." "I didn't mean." "Fuck you!" "Look, I'm just trying to be a gentleman here." "Well, you're fucking shit at it." "Shelby," interrupted Lucy. "How many girls you got down in your village?" asked Shelby. "One. And she's really nice." Lucy punched Shelby in the arm. "Yeah, well, Steve-O, we've got somewhere to be, so..." Maybe we'll see you down the road then. Stephen thought about saying something and instead just answered, Yes, you will. He saluted, mostly at Lucy. Lucy waved back. Shelby looked back to reverse and went forward. She put her finger up as if to say, I know what I'm doing, and went forward again. Stephen pushed the front brim of his hat up with his fingers. Would you like some help, little lady? He asked. I'm fine, Shelby said frostily, as Lucy pushed her head forward in front of Shelby so she could see Stephen. She waved and had the cheesiest smile on her face. Finally, Shelby found reverse. She kept on reversing till Stephen was out of sight. Lucy waved goodbye and he waved back smiling. He's dreamy, said Lucy in a musical tone. He's a fucking killer. It's written all over him. Oh, Shelby, one day we might need his help. I hope not, replied Shelby, as she did a 20-point turn, one better than before, and headed in the other direction. You're getting better at that, said Lucy, smiling. I know, right? Replied Shelby. Chapter 3. Companions. Max Marshall felt his feet start to hurt. They'd been walking for a good 8 hours and needed to take a break. If he could feel it in his toes, he wondered, how were Charlie and Pete? He could feel the edges of his shoes and was sure blood was sandwiched between his socks and skin. It was late afternoon, around 3 o'clock, and the road just seemed to keep going. Some nice houses along this way. Hey, Charlie. Charlie nodded, looking at the houses as if they were a kingdom in heaven. His mouth was wide open. Charlie was holding Pete's hand. What do you think, Pete? Asked Max. I like them, answered Pete, smiling up at Max. They're flash. That they are, Pete. I think one of these would be a nice place to stay tonight. What do you think, Charlie? Oh, yes, please. Can we? Asked Pete. I can't wait. Me too. My feet are killing me, added Max as he walked over to a car and sat on the bonnet. Damn, it's hot. He wiped the sweat from his brow with his t-shirt. Pete let go of Charlie's hand and ran over to Max. Max picked him up smiling. Well, little fella, you've still got so much energy. Yep, replied Pete as he sat next to Max on the car, mimicking his actions and folding his arms. Charlie joined in as all three of them sat beside each other, admiring the houses presented, arms folded. Charlie pulled out a water bottle and gave it to Pete, who drank thirstily. Which one, Charlie? Asked Max, rubbing his sore foot over his shoe. Charlie did the eeny, meeny, miny, mo thing and ended on a rather large house on the left. It looked like it was from the 50s. The windows were all blued out. Good choice. That looks like a mansion. Max smiled at Pete and Charlie. After you, my good sirs, he bowed to them. Why, thank you, my good man, replied Pete in an English accent as he hopped off the car and grabbed Charlie's hand. Max raised his eyebrows, amazed at Pete's instinctive talent for acting and accents. Good boy for being safe, Pete, said Max. Safety first? Hey, Charlie, noted Pete. Safety first, agreed Charlie, smiling at Pete. Charlie and Pete walked together hand in hand, with Max limping behind them. Charlie pushed the large gate open as Pete waited patiently for Max. "Thank you, Charlie," said Max. "Whoa, that house next door has seen better days," noticed Max as all three of them looked at the neighbouring house. The house was burnt to a crisp. Its exoskeleton was the only thing left standing. "Must have been a big fire," said Pete. "The biggest," replied Max. "No fire engines," Charlie added. "You're right, Charlie. There are no fire engines." Max walked up to the main door as Charlie and Pete were still spellbound by the burnt skeleton of the house. He knocked. "Max is funny. Why are you knocking?" asked Charlie, smiling. "You never know, Charlie. There might be someone home." "That's right," agreed Pete. "We don't want to just walk in, right, Max?" Max knocked again. "Well, it looks like there's no one home." "Let's go in," said Max, smiling at Charlie and Pete. "Max is joking," said Charlie with a serious face. "There's never anyone home." They walked in and shut the door behind them. Max did a quick tour of the house. He checked all the windows and made sure all the doors were closed. He'd done this many times before. "All safe! Downstairs!" he shouted as he ran up the stairs. The house was gargantuan. He found 5 bedrooms upstairs and 3 bathrooms. The main master bedroom looked out to the beach and had a deck that flowed around the outside of the second story. "Yes," he said to himself as he ran its length. The soft sea breeze was already cooling him down. On the deck was outside furniture and a tied-up umbrella. He left the doors open as he checked out the ensuite next to the master bedroom. It was huge, tiled, and quite beautiful. "This will do," he said, smiling to himself. Max kicked off his shoes and lay on the bed. "God damn," he said to himself as he experienced the softness of the mattress. Downstairs, he could hear Charlie and Pete laughing. Within a minute, he was fast asleep. Max woke up and cursed himself. "Jesus, what time is it?" The soft breeze from the sea had now turned into a blasting wind. The sun had disappeared behind a distant island, and the stars were sparkling in front of him. He was so tired, he had allowed himself to sleep, but never for this long. Not while he hadn't checked on Charlie and Pete. He ran downstairs, hoping to find them playing in the lounge. They weren't there. "Oh, shit!" he swore to himself as he sprinted past the lounge and checked the downstairs bathroom. Empty. The house was huge and each room seemed endless. He ran to the back of the house and found the kitchen. It was lit by moonlight. "Charlie? Pete?" shouted Max. "Jesus, guys! Where are you?" He stood by the bench, listening for any sounds. He could only hear the sea breaking in the distance. He ran to the rear of the house and found the wash house. The door to the outside was open. "Charlie! What the fuck?" he said to himself as he sprinted outside. In front of him was a massive lawn. To the right were kayaks and a small boat. Luckily, the moon was bright and he could make out most things. "Charlie," he whispered. He heard laughing coming from around the left side of the house. He ran. His feet still hurt, but he wasn't allowing it to slow him down. A distant clicking sound could be heard. He had heard it before. "Charlie!" he shouted, not caring anymore. "Over here!" came a voice. He saw Charlie as he got closer. He was leaning on the fence, looking at the burnt-out house next door. Pete was sitting on the fence. Charlie was keeping him steady, while tiptoeing on an angled outdoor chair. "Pete wanted to see the burnt-out house," said Charlie, smiling. "Not at night, Charlie!" shouted Max, as he hit some rubbish bins sitting in the shadows and fell. The clicking noise came again, but it was louder. It must have heard him shouting. He gathered himself and stood up. He saw it. In the far distance, coming from next door, something was running. On all eights. A large shadow running toward Charlie. Running to little Pete. "Charlie! God damn it! Get him off the fence!" Max screamed. "What?" answered Charlie. The shadow was moving so quickly. They had no chance. "Charlie!" A shot rang out in the night. It hit the creature. It hissed and was thrown to the right of Charlie and Pete, still on the other side of the fence, unseen. Max heard it hit the sand in a heap. He also heard it gather itself and leap again at Charlie and Pete. "Pete!" shouted Max. Another shot rang out in the night. Max heard the creature flailing and scrambling back to its feet. Another deafening discharge, and Max could not hear any noise coming from the conquered, vanquished creature. Max finally caught up to Charlie and Pete and hugged them. He pulled Pete off the fence as he heard a self-assured female voice from the other side of the fence exclaim, "Fuck yeah." Max opened the door, startled to find two attractive girls smiling back at him. "Good evening. Could we come in?" said Shelby, beaming. "Quickly," added Lucy, not appreciating the dark. Of course, quick, come inside," Max said, feeling both surprised and nervous. He hadn't seen anyone in months. Shelby and Lucy shuffled in as Max closed the door and deadbolted it. "Thank you so much for what you did out there. You saved their lives," Max smiled. "It was nothing," replied Shelby, matter-of-factly. "Well, it was impressive," said Max. "My name's Shelby. My friends call me Shell, but you can call me..." "Shelby," interrupted Max. "Beautiful name." "Mine's Lucy." "Pleased to meet you, Lucy. I'm Max." "Short for Maximilian?" Shelby asked. "No, just Max." "Well, Maximilian, do you want to show us the way? I can't see shit," said Shelby cheekily. "Sorry, sure, Shell," said Max. No, call me..." "Doesn't matter," said Shelby. Max led the way in the dark corridor as Shelby and Lucy walked behind. Lucy pulled Shelby's t-shirt. "Handsome," she whispered. Shelby pretended to disagree. Shelby watched Max as he walked ahead of them. The moonlit night was throwing shadows in places she couldn't make out. But she could make out his outline. He was fit and had a good V-shape to his torso. He had thick, wavy black hair. His lips were full, and she thought he must be mouldy. He had one of those faces that always seemed to be smiling, and she guessed he was of a similar age. He led them out into the open lounge area. It was huge. Charlie and Pete sat in the corner of a massive L-shaped sofa. They looked tiny sitting in it, like naughty schoolboys. Max sat next to them, and straight away Pete moved over to Max and sat on his lap, hugging him. Shelby thought that was adorable. Max turned to Charlie, who had his fingers crossed and his head down, swaying. Max was whispering, "Charlie, we don't go outside at night. Never. For whatever reason. We never go outside at night. Ever. 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 Never, replied Charlie, as he looked up at Max nervously and then looked back down again. Even if Pete wants to go outside at night, you don't go outside. I won't, said Charlie, now starting to rock back and forth. Good man, Max smiled. He put his hand on Charlie's shoulder and squeezed it. Sorry, said Charlie. I'm sorry too, added Pete, his head finding solace in Max's chest. It's not Charlie's fault. It's okay, Pete. Max looked up smiling handsomely at Shelby and Lucy. Lucy was in love. Shelby was not so impressed. How the fuck have you guys survived this long? Asked Shelby, bluntly. She was trying to get comfortable in a small chair. She put her right leg awkwardly up on the armrest, deciding it was worse than before, and placed her leg back down again. Shelby, responded Lucy, shocked. Shh, inside voice, replied Shelby. Shelby, whispered Lucy. Max put up his hand and made a stop sign signal. We don't swear in front of Pete and Charlie, he said with a straight face. That's going to be a problem, said Lucy in a musical tone with her volume lowered. Shelby half smiled, but didn't answer. Hey guys, why don't you go find something to do? Maybe there's some games in the cupboards, suggested Max. Yay! Games! Pete jumped to attention. Keep it down though, okay? Said Max, with care in his voice. Pete gave Max a kiss on the cheek and then grabbed Charlie's hand as they both smiled and skipped off. My God, they're both just little saints, said Lucy as she got up to search the pantry for food. Have you guys been here long? Just got here. From where? Asked Shelby. North, answered Max. Wine! Grape juice! Non-alcoholic! You want some? Asked Lucy. I'm so thirsty. Yes, please, replied Shelby, politely. Max smiled. I'll have some, thanks. Charlie and Pete came running back into the lounge, dancing. Was good puzzle, said Pete, happily carrying an oversized box in his small arms. Oh, I love those. Can I join in? Requested Lucy, smiling. Yes, please, Lucy, Pete said eagerly, placing full glasses of grape juice down for Max and Shelby. Lucy sat down with Charlie and Pete and the bottle of grape juice. Okay, let's check what the person is looking at, and then we can work out what the puzzle looks like, Lucy suggested. Charlie had his mouth open, tongue out, head angled and one eye closed, trying to understand what Lucy had just said. Good idea, said Pete. He's a smart kid. Yours? Asked Shelby, with a raised eyebrow. Max tilted his head sarcastically. Of course he's not mine. So, how did you get him? Long story. We've got time. She sipped her grape juice. I found him on one of my trips, out for food. He was in the back of a store. Came out like I was his dad or something. Wouldn't let me go. Jesus! How long ago was that? Since the vanishing. The vanishing? Is that what they call it? When every living thing disappeared? The vanishing? Shelby shrugged her shoulders. About a week. He was hungry, thirsty, dirty. We've been together ever since. And Charlie? 2 weeks after. Max sipped his drink. Pete and I went to the hospital to grab some medicine. Charlie was there. Alone. How? He doesn't know. Charlie doesn't know much, but he's a good soul. I can tell, agreed Shelby, smiling. Yeah, you can tell the good ones. Well done, Pete, said Lucy rather loudly. Pete looked up at Lucy, smiled, and snuggled closer to her. Lucy took a swig out of the glass, finished it, and refilled it quickly. You want to keep it down, Lucy, said Shelby. Oops, sorry, Lucy said as she smiled down at Pete. Noise police, she said as Pete laughed. I found one, said Charlie. Good man, supported Pete. Max smiled. They're so happy. For how long? Posed Shelby. Max's face changed from smiling to gravely serious. You're right. It's been tough. Real tough. We've only just escaped dying a few times. Seen ghosts? Ghosts? Asked Max, looking surprised at the notion of ghosts. Is that something else we're supposed to be seeing? I've seen monsters. Creatures that spit fire and acid. Insects as big as a horse, but would you believe it? No ghosts. Pete said he saw his mum once. Hey, Pete. I did. Pete looked around at everyone. His eyes were large. She was beautiful. I bet she was, Pete, said Max. Is that a ghost? I suppose, replied Shelby. Lucy looked over at Shelby and shook her head both ways, as if to say, don't say any more. She remembered what Michael had said. Don't mention the Blue Angel. We've had some close calls also. Shelby drank some more of her drink. This new world wants to kill us all. That's why we came down this way. We're looking for a safe haven. We're looking for Lucy's mum and dad. No way, Max responded, looking surprised. Your whole family survived the vanishing? Pete and Charlie turned and looked at Shelby both at the same time. Oh, no, I'm not Lucy's sister. Adopted, Lucy interrupted as she drank some more. She wiped her face as drink accidentally came out the sides of her mouth. That is non-alcoholic, right, Lucy? Asked Shelby. Pretty sure, Lucy answered as she tipped the bottle and noticed it was empty. There's plenty in the cupboard. Want some more? Sure, Max said. I'm okay, Shelby responded. Can I have some water, please, Lucy? Asked Pete. A little saint with manners, Lucy noted as she grabbed his cheeks. Of course, kind sir. Thank you, said Pete as he went back to studying the puzzle pieces, leaning on his knees. This is too hard, said Charlie, looking defeated. Don't give up, Charlie, Pete encouraged, trying a piece that didn't fit. What happened to Lucy's mum and dad? Asked Max. We ran into some of those monsters. It was at night. Shouldn't be on the road at night, Max advised. I fucking know that, replied Shelby, sounding annoyed. Pete looked up. Shelby felt regretful. She mouthed sorry to Max. We didn't have a choice, okay? We were trying to get to safety and shit happened. We got separated. We came down here because the house next door used to be ours. Which one? Surely not the burnt-down house next door. Shelby nodded. Holy. So I suppose that's another exciting story? Yep. Lucy's dad is a brave guy. Shelby tried to shorten the story. It's okay. You can tell me the story another day, said Max. We were hoping they might be here. Holy sugar! That's a great move, Pete, shouted Lucy. Shh, Max and Shelby said at the same time. You're in trouble, Charlie said, smiling cheekily. Sorry, whispered Lucy. I'm so happy we met you guys. Lucy ruffled Pete's hair. She took another drink. Both Max and Shelby frowned. We're going to check around tomorrow and leave a message for them. If they're not here, we'll go back to where we came from. Where's that? Asked Max. Shelby pointed. A few hours that way? She smiled. You're welcome to come with us. Safety in numbers and all that. She couldn't believe she said that, remembering Stephen saying the very same thing. Thank you, but no. We are pretty good together. We've lasted this long. We don't want to change anything. Shelby looked disappointed. She didn't realise she'd be happy to meet new people. Or that she'd like them. Or that she'd offer them passage with her and Lucy. It took a lot for her to ask. Okay, she said quietly. Max noticed the change in Shelby and felt he had let her down. He was thinking of his own responsibilities and didn't want to add to them. Charlie, Lucy and Pete didn't hear the conversation as Lucy was singing songs. I'm so happy, sang Lucy merrily as she drank her glass empty. What time is it? Asked Max. Just after 10, answered Shelby. Past our bedtime, Pete, said Max. Oh, do we have to? Pete asked in a pleading voice. We got to go to bed, Pete, said Charlie, catching Max's eye. Okay, Charlie, replied Pete as he got up and stretched. Can we finish this in the morning, Lucy? Asked Pete. Lucy was snoring. I swear, that was proper fucking wine, said Shelby, smiling. Oh, sorry, Shelby said quickly. Habit. Pete walked over to Max. Good night, Max. Max leaned over and Pete kissed him on the cheek. Pete walked over to Shelby and put his arms up. Shelby looked down at him, not knowing what to do. He wants a hug, Max said, smiling. Shelby leaned over and hugged Pete. He kissed her on the cheek. Good fucking night, Shelby, Pete said, grinning cheekily. Smart kid, Shelby said, trying not to laugh. Max was shaking his head with his eyebrows raised. He was failing to hide his amusement. Come on, Pete, said Charlie as he grabbed his hand. Master bedroom, Charlie. Right down the end, upstairs, Max directed. We'll wait. Charlie stopped at the bottom of the stairs, noticing how dreadfully dark it was on the second level. The night was turning pitch black as clouds covered the bright half-moon outside. You can pick whatever room you guys like upstairs, Shell. There's 4 extra and they're all doubles. Shelby smiled. Thank you. As the house went quiet, the only noises were those coming from the locked master bedroom. Max was quietly breathing on the left side of the king-size bed. On the right side was Charlie, snoring like a 50-year-old man with a breathing problem. Next to them, on the floor, was a double-sized mattress pulled in from the room next door. On the left slept Shelby, her mouth wide open, her body in the shape of an S. On the right was Lucy, her arms sprawled out and her left leg was out of the covers and hanging off the mattress. And lastly, sprawled, lying in the middle, with his arms laid out on both girls, was little Pete, sleeping comfortably, with a huge smile on his face.